Hello, everyone. Welcome to an episode of
Yakkin About Bojack.
And welcome to episode 5, Live Fast, Diane Nyugen. Melina, what did you think of this episode?
There was a lot in this episode. I really, and we'll definitely go into more, but I love seeing more about Diane's backstory and finding out more about her.
Yes, I agree.
Yes.
I love her. She's one of my favorite characters. So before we jump into those juicy details, let's go into a summary about what this episode covered. On a publisher visit to New York, Diane hears about her dad's passing, and Bojack and Diane do a short detour to Boston on their way back to help with the funeral. Bojack meets Diane's family and realizes Diane may not be the polished, perfect person he thinks she is. Todd and Princess Carolyn start a scam together. Melina, do you think that summary covers everything?
I think that covers the basic things because so much things happen in here. We cannot
So many
say
things
in
happen.
three sentences.
Yes, we do meet quite a few new characters. So we meet Diane's family. I guess technically we do meet her dad, but he has passed away. We meet Diane's mom, Gary Nyugen, the black sheep who's the adopted one, Artie Nyugen, Marty Nyugen, and Tommy.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see the regular cast. We get to see what Bojack went through, Todd went through, Princess Carolyn. We even see Mr. Peanut Butter this episode. I think we got to see everybody in the recurring cast. Obviously Diane too.
And then the penguin guy.
The
and
penguin
then, like,
guy. Yes.
The two reporters are trying to blackmail.
Yes!
Trying.
They're trying so hard. Oh my goodness.
I think that's actually pretty accurate. Like the thing they do, like they try to blackmail, but most people are just like, "You're probably joking." I think that's what people do. I could be wrong.
Yeah, but then the happens is then they end up actually blackmailing you. But I guess blackmailers technically don't want to release whatever they have because then they have nothing else left on you, and they want to milk you for money, right? If they still have whatever they have on you, they can continuously get things from you. So they don't want to release it either. No one really wants this release. Once it's released, they've lost that power on you. That's just my hot take on blackmail. Though if it's something really bad, then I guess I can see. But like Bojack doesn't even pick up the number.
Yeah. So maybe he's smart in that sense.
But until the end, then it's poor Todd. Poor Todd didn't get.
Oh yeah. Oh, poor Todd.
Melina, do you actually pick up unknown numbers?
It depends. Sometimes I do, but then most of the time it's just like, we are the federal police and we're gonna throw you in jail unless you call this number and give us $10,000.
Oh yeah, I also get the ones about the package. So I actually don't really pick up anymore any unknown numbers unless I know someone's about to call, which I feel like is a bad habit. Because what if my friend's in jail, Melina? What if you're in jail?
Then
don't call
leave
me.
A voicemail or text.
Yeah. Do they let you at jail, like when you're arrested, instead of being like one phone call, be like, can I have one text? But do you also remember everyone's numbers off the top of your head?
Oh, no, you're right.
This is something I stress out about. I know I tend to stress out about things unnecessarily.
Oh no, so if I'm in jail, I'm screwed pretty much. I would not be able to get anyone to help bail me out.
The last few numbers I remember are my parents' landline, which they don't have, and my childhood friend's landline number. I will always remember that number. That was when you had to type them physically into phones, right? So then I had to learn those numbers, but now
and I have like a phone book where I actually refer to it.
Yes. Oh man. What did you like about this episode in particular?
So in this episode, I liked how we got to see a lot more about Diane's family and her past and her situation and everything. Because like we knew, because mostly in previous episodes we focused almost entirely on Bojack.
Yeah.
And then also I guess Todd, we learned more about him in the last episode.
Yes.
But now it's like Diane, she gets the spotlight.
Yes.
And you said she was your favorite character, so I'm actually curious. I don't know if you want to go into it more or if you think you'll spoil me, but
I don't think I'll spoil you. I like Diane and I like Princess Carolyn because I feel like I can relate to two aspects of them very strongly.
Okay.
We find out Diane's 34 in this episode.
Oh.
Did you catch that? No. I didn't catch it the first time. I always thought Diane was like under 30. I don't know why when I watched it first. Maybe because, I'm not 30 yet and I assume everybody on TV is like my age. Maybe it's a bias. But I was like 34 and it kind of made me feel better because I feel like I relate to Diane's story and it makes me realize that I feel like there's an added pressure in my life that your life ends at 30. That's not true. Don't fall for that, listeners. There's a lot of pressure that you have to do things when you're young, and young is always this mark that keeps moving, right? Like technically young is just living in the moment. It's going to keep that marker of, I should have done things like 5 years ago. Well, do it now, because 5 years ago
Mm-hmm.
is also, 5 years from now, you'll be thinking about, why didn't I do it now? So just do things now, and that kind of concept. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I relate to Diane and Princess Carolyn as both women who have careers, who work, who have a lot of interesting dynamics.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you find Diane relatable in this episode?
There are definitely some parts that are relatable, and also some parts where, based on her history, like even some people I know in like my real life, like
Yes.
I can understand some of like their actions
Yes.
because of like the way that the way she responds to her family. I'm like, I see this in some of my friends and how they react because of certain
Yes.
families as well.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting. There's too much. There's too much to say. I don't know where to begin. For her, I guess the main thing was that she got home, and then
Yes.
like, and it's just like this crazy household of everyone just like
Yeah.
just yelling at her pretty much, and like making her do things, and like
Yes.
telling her like, oh my gosh, your Princess Diane finally decided to grace us with her presence,
Yes.
and like guilting her and that kind of thing. Like, I was so pissed off at her family.
Yeah, for sure.
But then the way that, even though she was angry at them, she also
Yes.
did everything she could to like get their approval
Yes.
and meet their needs
Yes.
and do everything they said. Like,
She was still like a good daughter. I feel like this is something that I can relate to a little bit. Like, I feel like there's this understanding, and maybe I'm making a generalization. Melina, you can correct me if you feel this way. I feel like there's this Asian understanding, and when I say Asian, I mean sort of pan-Asian. So, already it's a generalization, but understanding of, you have to be a good kid to your parents
mhm,
and like do right for your family and stuff.
mhm,
I feel like Diane kind of was living that out, but it wasn't just that. Like, I feel like it's sort of reductive to say it's just that, because I also feel like Diane wanted their approval. She says it
yeah,
even to the end at Bojack, right? And
mhm,
when she said, "Is it wrong to do that?" I was like, I don't think it's wrong. Like, I think that, your parents are important.
mhm.
Yeah.
But in terms of the approval that Diane was seeking, I actually think that, and I was looking into it as well because I've seen this behavior from people
Hmm.
who've come from negligent and abusive families, and
Yeah.
I know there's a stereotypical Asian family of, oh my gosh, they just beat their kids with shoes as kind of like a
Sorry, it's memed a lot. I started laughing.
yeah.
It's serious and
Mhm.
can sometimes cross the line, yes.
Yeah.
And it, yeah.
But in this case, like, I think the family was being neglectful and also abusive in the sense like they were putting her down.
Yeah.
They
It was
were
emotionally abusive. I agree with you.
emotion
They were
abusive.
definitely manipulating her.
I've seen that with family, with people from families like that. They try to, the children of those like family members try to seek
Hmm.
the approval of the family like extra hard, despite being treated in such a way.
Yeah.
And I was reading somewhere, it was like this whole parent-child dynamic where it was kind of like they kind of equated like parents, like children equate the parents' approval as parents loving them, and that means
Hmm.
they're like worth something.
Yes.
But not having the parents' approval means they're not lovable and not worthy,
Yes.
and hence to try to be worthy and be lovable, they try extra hard, even though the other person, family, whatever, may not reciprocate.
Yes. Actually, this is interesting, because now this is the third character we've had a conversation about external self-worth.
Mm,
So our first character, I think the first episode we talked about how Bojack, he's like externalized his self-worth, and now that he doesn't have a show, he goes back to the one time he felt validated by people loving him, which was rewatching episodes of Bojack. And then
mm,
Sarah Lynn
mm,
did anything for an audience, even if it was bad for
mm,
her, like stabbing herself with the
mm,
bayonet.
mm,
And now we see Diane, which is a different flavor of that. It's not really her audience, but it looks like she wants her family's approval,
mm,
and she wants
mm.
them to be proud.
Yeah, and it's all like you said, external validation. Like there isn't that internal validation of like I am worth it, I am lovable, I don't have to prove myself, and I
Yeah.
don't need other people's approval to know that I'm worth it.
I have to confess, that is a really hard thing to develop. I feel like
Hmm.
I'm still on that journey.
Yeah.
It's really hard to come from an understanding of realizing your own worth and treating yourself with that, because I also think our society,
Hmm.
and I always blame it on society, but I don't think that's necessarily fair. It's also like upbringing, environment, and so many other factors. But I do think our society, like, people make money off of the fact that, you need external validation, and
Hmm.
a lot of industries thrive on it too. So
Hmm.
your environment definitely can impact that as well.
And like there is some importance to like external, well, not some. There is a degree of importance to external validation too. It's like it kind of keeps you in check too. Like you don't go completely, I don't know, anti-social or whatever.
Like definitely getting external opinions is good. I think there's that fine line, and obviously this is armchair psychology, but there is that fine line between, you're getting external input versus getting validation about your self-worth. That's the line. And I think sometimes we're so close to that line impacting us that it can be dangerous. Like, for example, I think the first time I was like an intern at a job and I was getting my code reviewed by like a senior engineer, I was so nervous. And I'm a fairly social person. I don't get nervous in like one-on-ones typically, or sometimes, but in this meeting I was so nervous I wanted to like throw up the whole time, because I was like, if they say something negative, I'm going to feel like there's huge imposter syndrome because I'm, like a woman in tech right now. I feel like definitely feel that more so, but I've heard a lot of people in my industry say that's common. People feel imposter syndrome all the time, but I felt like hearing negative feedback would be like a confirmation of that to some degree. And I took a moment, I think just before, and I realized if they say something negative, I need to take a deep breath and realize it is not me, it is, the work. But I took a moment to do that because I was like, I don't want to be the person who's super defensive and angry to work with, because that's not fun to work with. That's why I did it. I didn't realize later that it is like just saying that to yourself and understanding that helps you create that division between it is important to get external input and get critique, as you mentioned. Like that keeps us in check. It helps us make things as a team, as a group, and work. And that's great. Like the human species and collaborating and all that stuff is lovely. But separating that from understanding it doesn't mean that you are less than can sometimes be hard, especially in like high stress situations and when you're the junior most person on a team. When you're like, oh no, all these senior people are going to come in, and you still got to hear it.
I think for sure, like external validation is also something I definitely struggle with. I think especially it's like because I'm constantly comparing myself to other people, even though we shouldn't. In theory, we shouldn't be.
I would argue social media makes it even easier.
Yeah.
Because we only show our best parts to our friends. And I think even before social media, it was sort of frowned upon to talk about your problems in society. You only if you met up with someone every 5 years for brunch or something, pre-social media, you just tell them, oh, I got married and this happened. You're going to tell them the highlights of your life. You're never going to tell them, I guess you might tell them some lowlights, but you're not going to tell them I had a really bad year and things were awful. I was inside all the time because of a global pandemic.
Because I think it also depends on the person you're approaching. You don't know if they're a safe person to approach. Like someone you can open up to them, even if you think they are your friend. They might be like, this person is crazy. I don't want to ever hear from them again.
Yeah, you're right. It's not always safe to share the lowlights because they are more vulnerable, and it can not everyone is a safe person to be vulnerable with, right? And to open yourself up that way. Melina, I think we both, because of mutual friends, shared this to us, but you've watched Brene Brown's TED Talk.
Yes.
And this reminds me so much of that discussion about vulnerability helps you live wholeheartedly, but it's also like you can't just be vulnerable the moment you step out that door, or it's like a skill to sort of learn because it is kind of like going out there without any shield or anything to protect you.
Yeah.
Which can be a scary thing.
It can be scary. And people might use it against you. But
you
just have to find people who you can trust. Like Diane, who can trust Mr. Peanut Butter.
Oh, Diane. Oh, I love their conversations.
Yeah.
That conversation made me realize why Mr. Peanut Butter and Diane are still in a relationship.
And that was so adorable. I was like, oh, Mr. Peanut Butter, you're supporting her.
The crunchy and creamy, was it?
Yeah. Which I think, is that supposed to be a, oh! I just realized! That's because of the peanut butter. That's like the creamy ones and the crunchy ones.
Yes. Oh my god, I love it, Melina. That was like live on recording.
Because as you were saying, I'm like, that's just like the jars that I used to eat. And I'm like, oh, but his name is Mr. Peanut Butter. And
that's why they said patent pending. And she's like, it's not. They already denied it. But I love that was really sweet, and I think that though he doesn't seem to really understand the depth of the issue, and they didn't talk about it, I do think that Mr. Peanut Butter is so positive in that same way we talked about last week with Zoe's and Zelda's. I can't remember which one's the positive one. I think Zoe, right?
Zelda's are the positive.
Oh, thanks. The Zeldas, like I think that really helps counteract or at least make Diane feel distract her.
Yeah, I think it kind of also like finding out more about Diane's family. I think also explain a bit about why she was with Wayne.
Oh, because
Yeah,
Wayne is also critical. Like her previous partners have all been like her family.
yeah.
And that also, yeah, that explains why Diane is also super critical as well,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Like her personality is shaped by that as well. I can see that. Ooh, that's a good
Yeah,
point.
shaped by that, but also like there's the idea like generally the qualities that you find or you seek in a partner is like also the qualities you seek in like the opposite sex parent, apparently.
Yeah, I think it's like my theory on that
Hmm.
is more that your family dynamic is the one you learn as a
Mhm.
family dynamic,
Mhm.
right? Unless you actively try to do something different, you learn that as like this is a good dynamic.
Mhm.
And so you start mirroring that in your relationships.
Mhm.
And so if you end up acting like one of your parents, then you're going to look for that same dynamic. So you'll look for someone like, I guess, the opposite parent, or, but if it depends on who you are in that
Mhm.
dynamic, it could also be within your family and her brothers and how they treat her.
Mhm.
That Leo letter thing,
Mhm.
so cruel. But I also can understand how that was kind of like brothers could see it in a fun way, but the way they brought it up and they actually took so much joy.
Yeah, that remind me again. That's like the homeless. Like they set her up with a homeless
Yeah, they
person.
wrote her
Yes.
letters
Yes.
pretending to be they catfished their sister,
Yes.
and
Yes.
then they they set her up saying that hey, the guy that was catfishing you is this homeless man,
Mhm.
and they made her go to homecoming like that,
Mhm.
and she was trying to but it led to like Bojack's letter to Diane, which I thought at the end was funny because he did it as if it's Leo.
Mhm.
What did you think about that letter?
So, well, I'll talk about Bojack's letter, and then I'll talk about his behavior, like with the
Okay.
family and then with like Diane and stuff.
Yes, I think that's a good point.
Hmm.
Yes.
So that letter, and if I recall correctly, like he was talking about how like all these little things that he noticed about her that are like
Yes.
not even very obvious ones.
Yeah, I think I wrote some of them
It
down.
was like one of them was like she popped
Yeah.
gum or chewed gum on an airplane.
Yeah, she chews gums on
Hmm.
airplanes because now they've traveled together on airplane so
Hmm.
that her ears won't pop.
Hmm.
Have you tried that? I was like kind of like, does that work?
My ears don't pop, so I have not tried it before.
Your ears just don't. You're lying.
I, d-
No
I
way.
don't think they have.
Even when you go on an elevator.
I think they've only popped when I've like gone underwater, like swimming, like when you go really really deep, and I have
Oh,
not brought gum
I
to me
see.
when I go swimming.
Oh, really? You don't have gum in your mouth? You're not chewing with your mouth open while you're underwater? So strange. Uh, sorry. That's fair. That's fair. That makes sense. I liked how he brought like the fact that she brings her own bag to the
Oh
grocery
yeah,
store. That was so sweet. I was just like, did he notice, or is that just a generic statement? But it's kind of sweet.
yeah. It was really interesting. Like I was not expecting that from him. Like maybe it's just because I
Yes.
still see him as this really obnoxious guy who's getting
Yes.
slightly, and also with the whole sabotage of Todd in the last episode.
Todd. Just last episode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I was not expecting him to be so kind to her.
Too kind. And he understood that she was not being appreciated. Like
Mhm.
he wrote that in the letter. So I was like, wow, he understood this. He took the time to do a sweet gesture
Mhm.
to his friend,
Mhm.
even though in the beginning he said he wasn't good with funerals and, all that stuff, which I'm
Yeah.
sure added to it. Even though she didn't really like her family, she
Mhm.
still wanted their approval and her dad actually
Mhm.
did pass away. So,
Mhm. Like, how did you feel about how he acted like with her family? Because at the beginning he was all like, "Oh my gosh, I've always wanted a family, like brothers," and like was like, "Oh my gosh, that Leo thing was
oh,
so funny." Like, "Oh my gosh, just a brother thing. You'll never understand, Diane."
yeah, I think that was also like Bojack's family situation, right?
Mm.
He feels really alone and like he was not in the in group. Like his parents had their own thing, so he was just left by himself.
Mm.
At least Diane, she felt alone in her family, but she had interactions with her siblings. I think that Bojack just wanted to like it's the same reason he didn't want Todd to move out. I think he just want people around
Mm.
because he gets joy from being liked by people and also by just having people in his life and having friends. Like, Bojack doesn't really have a lot of friends.
Mm-hmm.
Now he kind of has his agent. Diane's his ghostwriter,
Mm-hmm.
and Mr. Peanut Butter is someone who's worked with him before. They're sort of like friends, but not friends first. They sort of are they're not work, they're coworkers or colleagues first and then friends.
Mm-hmm.
Todd is kind of just, he's there.
Mm-hmm.
So he can't say it's his friend, but he is his friend, right? And I think that Bojack's just lonely and he was just trying to be cool so he could do that. Plus, they really liked him. And he was sort of living out his fantasy a little
Yeah.
bit in someone else's life. What did you think about Bojack's advice? Like, we talked about how Diane's worth, self-worth is because she's getting her validation from her family. Like, Diane's externalizing that. And we're talking about how, the goal is really to fix that. But Bojack's advice was all about leave them behind. Because he said you shouldn't, like, it's bad to even want your family's validation, which we agreed is not great. Like, it's okay to want input from other people, but did you like his advice, the contrary advice, which is, should you just leave your family behind?
That's a difficult topic, and I don't think there's like a right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
I think that it really depends on people that are like on both the person and also like the problematic family. Like,
yeah, that's actually true. I was about to say, like, I don't know if that's true and you could work together. I was going to say that, but you're right, Melina. In some situations, it is probably not, like, you can try to work, but not only is it draining, it could be dangerous for you, both emotionally and physically. And I think we definitely encourage, if anyone's dealing with those issues and you need to seek help, please seek help. In that case, I can see that it makes sense to leave. And how do you know if that's the case? It's a thing you got to figure out on a case by case basis. How do you know when you're in that situation? It's a case by case basis.
Yeah, like I do think it is important for a person to have like be more stable themselves before they try to confront the family and try to, well, not confront, but like try to fix that relationship. Because if they're still having like a lot of issues with needing the external validation and they're trying to solve the issue, then they might fall back into old habits.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I read a book recently, and I'm trying to remember if I can remember whether it was this book exactly. I think it was The New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. I think so. Maybe incorrectly attributing this quote and paraphrased quote at that. But he mentions how even if you are the most enlightened person in the world, going in a room with your parents can suddenly change all that. And that is because they are someone who's been at such a formative part. His justification, I think, was they've been at such a formative part of your life, and that your relationship is so old, that dynamic is old and written in your mind, right? That it is hard to change that already written path and that route, and it can really reopen some of that stuff. And it made me feel a little bit better because I was like, oh, okay, so like he was not just saying like it's okay. He's not saying that it's fine, but he's like, understand that that is a hard relationship to sort of work through, which is your family, because they're an old relationship, meaning that you've already built up a repertoire, a dynamic of how things work in the situation. And for years, I guess, like, Diane's 34, so I guess for 34 years she's been treated like this by her family, which is why she did leave them behind to some degree.
What did you think about Diane's family in general? They seemed very. I know in our first episode, you had asked me like, what do you think about her being like an Asian individual on the show? But we see her family, and they seem very not Asian.
Yeah, so I think we also didn't talk about this. The fact we didn't. Oh, I don't know who did the voices for Diane's family, but Diane herself, her voice is done by Alison Brie, who is in fact a white actress. So that is interesting. That's a discussion probably for maybe a bonus episode at the end of the season because we didn't cover it. But in terms of her family being Americanized, I thought there were some pros and cons. Right? I think that every time we see a family, we always see them as first generation. And there can be the first generation, the fact where, the parents are immigrants, everybody has a heavy accent, and there is, that's kind of like a stereotypical depiction that we see on TV. There's heavy accents, and there is also very pushing in your culture. And I think for Diane's family, that's been like, at least it seems like she was born in the US. She was actually, I think she mentioned that one episode. So at least 34 years in the country. this is something that I would have liked to see if you're going to do first generation families in 34 years. They do this in Kim's Convenience a little bit too. Even if your family still has accents, there is sort of this line that happens of you get influenced by American culture and you also, your culture sort of gets influenced in a fusion in the house. Like as someone who's also first generation, in the house we'll start using, like, we speak a mix of mostly English. Even cultures and the food and sort of everything gets mixed together, and sometimes I'll switch languages and I won't realize there's like this fusion that happens. So I would have liked to see something like that. That being said, I did enjoy to some degree that her family was American because it broke a stereotype that every time someone is Asian, their family needs to be very obviously Asian, and they would go back to not the fusion, which I would have liked to see, but they would have gone back to they're fresh off the boat or fresh off the plane, as you will now. As if they, everything is new and they don't understand stuff, and that can happen because everybody has a degree of fusion and influence, but that's like a stereotype that exists. And I do like how this was like refreshing that it wasn't all about their ethnicity. They did talk about it in the beginning a bit. The part I didn't like was how, like, I feel like some part of them being Vietnamese was a race and it was just all Boston, which to me I was a little sad, but I do think that it was funny because I do know some immigrants who also forget, not they forget that they're immigrants, but they're so easy to adopt that culture because they sometimes there's some shame, and her brothers were all like, we're not immigrants and those dirty immigrants are stealing all our jobs. And I was like, and Diane was like, what? But that also I think is like, I've heard of that happening. It hasn't happened in my family. I haven't heard people say that, but I do know other people who are like first generation immigrant who've said that, and I'm like, the irony is not lost on me. How have you missed it? Melina, what did you think about how American her family was?
Yeah, I think they were completely American. Like if they didn't have a last name, if they didn't tell us their last names, and if I couldn't see them visually, I would have just
Yeah.
thought they were a Western family, like an American family.
Yes.
I would not have thought they were otherwise.
And did you think that was good or bad? Or I guess you can have a more nuanced opinion.
I think it was interesting because I think especially recently there's been a lot more, like I feel that out there in Hollywood and stuff, there's been a lot more talk about how they want more Asian actors and actresses and acting people in general to not just fall into the box of nerd or
which I think is great. It's nerd, antisocial,
and awkward, clumsy, and the fact that
clumsy,
they are
or really, in some ways has difficulty making friends is really weird to some degree. There's always some like negative connotation, or like they're really good at helping the main lead do things by being there. I don't know, like exploited in some way. And in some ways, I guess Diane's character is being exploited as a ghostwriter. But I do feel like she's a main character here. Even the fact that she's being as a ghostwriter doesn't mean she's just like there only for Bojack. Like we get to see her background, we get to see her struggles and her relationship with Mr. Peanut Butter, Wayne. So
and like her struggles isn't a stereotypical like Asian struggle too. It's not like a
it's not coded only for her race. She's more than just her race, which I really enjoyed as well.
So that was interesting.
Yeah, I think that making her family more American allows us to see beyond that. I also do think is it also something they did to make her more relatable?
I think so.
I hope not.
Maybe more.
Or you think it might be? I don't know.
More relatable, but I guess also it's like also to show like it's not a big deal. Like there can be different people of different races. Like,
and I like that. Like I do think that race does play a big role, but it's not the only role. It's also the same thing I feel like with shows that have any person on the LGBTQ spectrum. Like the story ends up being about coming out. And it ends up being about the struggle about coming out. And I'm like, yes, that is a big part of that experience. But, there's more to a person than their sexual orientation. There's more to a person about like, that is a big part of who you are, like race and like that intersection of who you are, but it's really the intersection of all those things. There's so many compounding and intricate and nuanced parts of being alive. And I was like, why are we seeing the same stories again and again? Especially about people who are, maybe minorities in different facets, right? We all end up seeing the same stories.
Like just having that quality if it's like an example you gave earlier with the LGBTQ, it's like this character has a struggle of something else, but they also just
Yes.
happen to be queer. But that's not a big deal. It's this
Yeah.
other big struggle.
I love
That's
those
the
stories. You're
issue.
like, yeah, they happen to be queer, but it's not, that's not the primary part.
Yeah. 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 So that was interesting. Like, at least in BoJack Horseman, it's nice to see that they focus on like a general struggle of just this family dynamics.
Yeah. It's nice to know that each of the characters is, as you mentioned, you said before, multi-dimensional, and I said they were 2D. Yeah, but they have, I think, more than 3 dimensions, Melina. They're I'm done. That was not good. You can hate me for that. I feel like we've lost all our listeners.
The 4th dimension is time, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's why Diane's concerned about being 34. Oh my god, do you know when BoJack put her on blast for saying, Diane's not that great. She's 34,
my gosh!
And she's a freeloader at her boyfriend's, and she's a ghostwriter.
Yes.
And I was like, ooh.
And then she broke.
Yeah, would you have broken?
I would have felt humiliated too.
Yeah, I would have felt so humiliated. I would have felt, because I think that Diane is still, like, she's swimming, and I think that sometimes in life you need to just keep swimming. You need to also, live and do your best. But like, when someone's swimming, you don't knock the swim. I don't know. That's not a good.
But I think in BoJack's situation, I don't think he realized, like, he was too focused on trying to like make friends with them and fit in, because he's like, oh my gosh, like, I always wanted brothers, like, but they were knocking on her, and he's like, I'll do it too. It's not that big of a deal, until she started destroying everything.
Yeah, and then he turned around with the letter. That was really sweet.
That was very sweet. A very surprisingly sweet letter. Was not expecting that at all.
So at the end of that whole bit, when they're at the airport, BoJack calls Herb. Why do you think BoJack wants to talk to Herb? So one thing I'll point out, this is the 3rd time I think in the show we've seen Herb. Do you remember all 3 instances?
I only remember the one where they met at, I think he was doing a stand-up comedy or something.
Oh yeah, that was last episode, Zoe's and Zelda's.
Okay.
Right? The cold open to the show is he meets Herb at his stand-up set.
Yeah. I don't think I remember the other incident.
The first one is the episode with Sarah Lynn. After they finish that whole movie montage bit where they're sitting down and he tries to have like a great day with Sarah Lynn and he was making up to her. They watch the sunset and Sarah Lynn says, Herb is dying of cancer.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And BoJack says, what? Why are you telling me this? He's like, oh, I just thought you should know.
Okay.
So why do you think BoJack is talking to her? What are your predictions?
Oh, so assuming he didn't know that he was dying of cancer, I still think that he tried to ruin his relationship with Herb, not necessarily because the guy was going to die of cancer, but maybe because he was so positive, like such a good influence, and BoJack cannot handle the positivity.
Yeah, he can't handle anything good in his life.
So I still think he did try to ruin a relationship, but now that he did hear that, and also with his relationship, like trying to help with the relationship with Diane, like he's going to try to reconnect with Herb still.
Okay.
I could be completely wrong in the next episode.
No, I'm not saying anything. I think it's interesting, but I want to know, I want to have it recorded so that when we watch episodes, we can bring it up, because you actually got something on the money. So earlier on, you were so convinced that Diane is not manipulative. What was the word? She's not really a pusher, but you had an idea that Diane had an approach to how she was going to get BoJack to like talk.
Oh, yes. Oh!
She was going to say...
Because she lied about her, like, hanging out with her dad.
Yeah. Because you were like, oh yeah, Diane just says that because she wants to get out. I was like, are you sure? Diane seems so honest. And guess who was confirmed with that prediction?
Hey.
Oh my god. Yeah. That was pretty good. I actually didn't even remember that Diane lied. I think I just believed it the first time, and then I found out this episode that Diane actually, like, she does a good job. She knows what she's doing.
Yes.
I also really enjoyed the animal bits this episode. We'll keep... There's only 2 that I really liked, which are pretty obvious.
I don't think I've noticed them.
Yeah, see, I think as you go on, they get harder to notice because you forget their animals.
Okay.
The adoptive brother that Diane has, he is literally a black sheep.
Oh! Because he was the black sheep of the family!
Yeah. So when they're like, you're the black sheep. So Diane is the metaphorical black sheep of her family, but there is a literal black sheep. So when people ask, she's like, no, there's that's her adopted brother. The second one is Princess Carolyn after Todd and Princess Carolyn's scheme goes down the drain. She's like, cats always land.
Yes.
Sorry, I just laughed at that. Cats always land on their feet. She goes out the window. Poor Todd.
Oh my gosh. How did you actually, since we're talking about that, how did you feel about, because I know you were really liked how like Princess Carolyn's like such a businesswoman and like she's got like, ambitions.
Yes.
How did you feel about what she and Todd were doing?
I love how she calls up Todd. She just knows about it. She tells him, don't worry that I know about it. I'm your agent. Did Todd even know? I guess in the last episode with the rock opera, she was his agent. Like, Todd's like, okay. I know it was sketchy in terms of the legal area, but I loved it for Princess Carolyn's acumen. She also threw Todd to do all the work, and then she took a cut. She just, like, upped the price. She actually got Mila Kunis.
Yes, that was...
But... Poor Mila Kunis, what did she do? Why? Yeah, I thought Princess Carolyn was she knows how to spin that money. Spin that money? I don't know. It is commendable. I think Todd is like so honest even in his feelings.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. I couldn't tell whether they were making fun of David Boreanaz.
I don't think they were. I mean, it just felt like they just were trying to make money, and he just happened to be a character that the character the tourist or whatever mentioned.
Yeah, he happened to be a character they mentioned, but like I thought it was a commentary on the fact that like people in LA or tourists will just buy anything if a celebrity touches, about that fanatic culture just going out of whack. And then I also thought they were kind of making fun of David Boreanaz because they said they couldn't remember what show he was on. And so when I first watched it, I actually was like, I don't remember this name, and I guess it's just someone famous in Hollywood. I don't know enough about Hollywood. That's what I assumed it was. And I looked it up after, and David Boreanaz was on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I 100% know him.
Oh.
Yes. So on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, he was Angel, and he had a whole spin-off show.
Oh.
And he was also on Bones. Oh my god, that's so way more. He's on Bones. He's the main male lead on Bones, right?
Wow. I didn't.
You know of it. It's like, yeah. So he was actually a big, and they couldn't remember what show he was on. Maybe this is because they just didn't have like the rights to actually talk about David Boreanaz, and they were like, I think that was just some inside joke that we just don't understand. We're not Hollywood enough. Oh my goodness. We'll find out when we watch the next episode, won't we?
Yes, we will.
Yakkin About Bojack is produced, recorded, and edited by Melina and Aditi. Music is by Podcast Co's royalty-free album Keep Calm and Podcast, the song One Fine Day. All thoughts in this podcast are personal opinions. If you or someone you know is experiencing issues with addiction, substance abuse, or any of the topics mentioned in this episode, please know there is hope and seek professional help.